30 milligrams later, I'm still alive. A 25I-NBOMe report by Dear Psychonaut on erowid.org in 2013. Introduction. As you can tell from the title, this isn't an ordinary experience. It was something of a death trip hell ride that I'm lucky enough to walk away from. The following cannot be expressed in any real order or time sequence because of the intoxication of a massive amount of a drug, resulting in my serotonin receptors to be lit up beyond belief, along with what I'm pretty sure was a hefty amount of dopamine release. I do not advise anyone to do this, and to use extreme caution when using this substance, and when using online chemical vendors. Although the later third of this trip was relatively enjoyable, this was not a fun trip. This report is intended for people to understand the dangers of working with online chemical vendors, and to add to the wealth or lack of knowledge on the internet about the NBOMe analogues. Background. Prior to this experience, I had experiences with the following: LSD, DMT, 2CE, 2CI, 2CT2, 4-ACO-DMT, psilocybin, AMT, 4-MEC, MXC, DXM, LSA, Amanita muscaria, Syrian rue, cannabis, alcohol, and a handful of previous 25I-NBOMe adventures. About a year prior to this experience, I had ordered 25I-NBOMe online from a trusted source, diluted it in water myself, and everything went swimmingly. I had no problems health-wise with myself or anyone else who enjoyed it with me. I had also ordered regular 2CI in the mail from the same source, and it went perfect. This time, I wasn't so lucky. I was living with a friend at the time, and we ordered a batch of research chemicals every week. I did it to make money. He did it so he could trip essentially for free. It was a system we were both able to take advantage of. He fronted the money, I'd order, sell his half and pay him the money back for what he fronted, and sold my half to make money. I was unemployed and making enough to sustain myself, so I figured, why get a job? So a week rolled around, and after 2 weeks of dealing with 2CT2, I suggested 2CI should be our next batch. We ordered up the 2CI, and it arrived a few days later. This chemical vendor I had been working with for about 6 months, and never was anything but phenomenal. Absolutely outstanding products and great prices. Even was able to contact a third-party lab to confirm the quality of substance. To say the least, I was one of his biggest customers, and most loyal. So I wasn't worried for a second about the purity of this batch. Little did I know, this batch was mislabeled. I was about to ingest an insane amount of 25I-NBOMe, and I had no idea what I was in for. Set and setting. A day after the package arrived, I decided to try it out. It was a warm June day, about 80 degrees. I was living with a friend and his girlfriend in his grandmother's house, who no longer lived there but stopped by once in a while. She did not know I was staying there. I got to the point where I was a bit uncomfortable with my living situation and didn't quite feel like I belonged. None of us were paying rent, all just sort of mooching off her grandmother that was paying all the bills, including internet and cable. My relationship with my roommates was crumbling. We get along and are friends to this day, but living together was a bad idea. Different lifestyles, and not meant to live together for long periods of time. This day was a decent day, however. The meth heads next door were not bothering us, and we had what we thought was some good 2CI waiting for us. The trip. I weighed up 20 milligrams and threw it in my mouth. No matter what I take, I usually let it sit in my mouth for a while, just so it hits faster. Not sure if it's a mental thing, but almost always works. It was a bit strange. I don't remember 2CI having this taste. It was obviously a nasty chemical taste, but the bitterness was a bit more pronounced, and had more of an odour to it. About 10 minutes later, I drank it down with a glass of water, and snorted another 10 milligrams. I felt I was pretty tolerant to 2Cs, being as I had taken a few of them in the past in high doses. I knew I was in for a good trip, but not nearly the magnitude that would result. After I snorted the 10 milligrams, I noticed something strange. Almost no burn in the nostril. For about 2 seconds, I thought, fuck, it's bunk, until I felt the psychedelic energy come over me. My entire vision was soon covered in fractals, and I was extremely stimulated. I quickly sat down in a chair and tried to play with a cat, but it didn't work too well. Couldn't focus on even a kitten. I began to think something fishy was going on. I decided to go for a walk. This is where the trip began to lose linear structure. I walk out of the door of the house I'm essentially squatting in, and the outdoors is incredibly blissful. Everything has a shimmering quality, and the leaves of trees are flowing into one another. It's about midday, and the sun is shining high in the sky. I walk a few blocks to a huge wooded park and enter the forest. I feel a bit cold, which is strange on the warm day. I lose myself in the greenery and the life of the forest. At one point, I find myself on the brink of a creek, watching the roots of the trees that are exposed intertwine with each other and the leaves around them. I climb on the exposed roots and lose all sense of being separate from them. I was the tree. I was its root, and it was my job to find and provide nutrients, water, and food for the entire interconnected forest. I felt at peace. I felt as if my niche with nature was finally intact, something I had searched for my entire life. Somewhere in this bliss, I realised that gaining water for the tree meant I needed water myself. I searched my immediate surroundings, and I realised something horrible. I didn't bring any water with me. I thought I was on a large dose, but was really on an insane, maybe even lethal dose of a research chemical, and I hadn't brought any water when going on a multiple-mile walk. I quickly kneel down to the creek and drink out of it. It is gross water, but fills me back up with life. I again feel wondrous, and soon get lost in the psychedelic bliss. During this sustained amount of bliss, I take more and more gulps from the stream. My only recollection of reality was finding a stream and drinking from it numerous times from this nature walk. The rest is filled with seemingly coexisting peaceful moments with nature. At one point, I was in a tree, another in a hole in the ground covered in beetles and ants, and yet another rolling around in endless laughter in tall grass, along with countless others that only reappear to my memory in dream states or other mystical states. This forest was huge, so there wasn't much to be worried about in the aspect of people finding me. This might have been my downfall. My last glimpse of reality in the forest was walking on the paved trail and realising that I was about to leave the park. I realised there must have been something wrong. My temperature is through the roof. I'm sweating beyond belief. And I put my hand up to my neck to feel my heart rate and relative blood pressure, and it is pounding at over 130 BPM. This strikes fear in me, and I think, I need to find water. I soon look around and find an old disgusting bottle of water that seems to have plant life in it. I pour it over my head and drink some of it. It was my mission to make it back to the house without any break in reality. I knew at this point something was up with the drug I took. I thought to myself it probably wasn't 2CI, and suddenly I realised that it nearly felt identical to 25I-NBOMe. The feeling in my nostril of almost no burn, the immediate psychedelic slam of a higher magnitude than any 2CI adventure in the past, and the dehydration and insane heart rate. It all added up. The walk home is something that escaped my memory. The next thing I remember is saying hello to my roommate and saying I needed to go to sleep. They each took 20 milligrams orally without holding it in their mouths, and I was worried about them to hell, but I figured if I can make it with how much I took, they could. If I felt like I needed the hospital, I would tell them and they would come with. They took much less than me. I figured I'd be the guide. I walked upstairs and tried to wait out my trip. This house did not have air conditioning, and soon I was lying on my bed in the most upstairs room with a wet washcloth tossing and turning in my bed. My entire vision swarmed with psychedelic visions in a dream state, and I watched a snake devour my arm. And I'm not sure what that was about. I was lost in myself. I had no sense of who I was. All I knew was that I was in trouble. This went on for hours. Heart rate now above 140 BPM, and temperature fluctuation was hell. From extremely hot, and my brain felt like it was melting, to freezing and needing to be under 1,000 blankets. The mindset at this point was empty terror. That's the only way I can describe it, to be honest. I had no control over my emotions or thoughts. All I knew was I was terrified to death. Then suddenly, I find myself on the couch downstairs, laughing with my roommates. I again check my heart rate, and it's at a healthy level. Healthy compared to before, 110 BPM or so. I am thirsty, but I have a glass of water right next to me. I'm watching an underwater sea show, and I'm enjoying it immensely. One of my favourite metal bands, Meshuggah, is playing in the background, and my vision is swarming with fractal beauty. To this day, I don't know how I got down there, or if the whole adventure upstairs in my bed was just imaginary. My roommates were fine from the 20 milligrams they took orally. Just said they tripped hard with a massive thirst and a weird sensation of being warm. They tell me it's 10 PM and are coming down themselves. I realise I've been tripping for nearly 11 hours, and I'm tripping at this point extremely hard yet, but at least it's manageable. The remaining 3 or 4 hours of the trip we spent together, watching underwater sea life and listening to Meshuggah. At this point, it was quite enjoyable, and I was blown away that everything ended okay to the point of tears. I was unable to sleep that night because of the lingering stimulation and emotional stress due to actually being alive. The next few months, I had very strong HPPD. All patterns would move if I looked at them for too long. Lights were multicoloured and usually took on a fractal pattern. Colours were extremely vibrant and sometimes mismatched. Certain pitches of sound put me in a strange meditative headspace, and to this day, Dancers to a Discordant System by Meshuggah nearly makes me flashback. Conclusion. This was hell. I don't think you understand hell until you come this close to death. This drug isn't anything special. It's a stimulant with psychedelic visuals and some empathogenic effects. While the beginning and the end were somewhat enjoyable, the middle was a realm of existence I'd rather die than visit again. Just because I survived this doesn't mean you will. I truly believe even 1 milligram could have killed me. During the moments of which I cannot decipher, I could have easily died from a heart attack or overheating. I will never order from a chemical vendor again unless I have the means to accurately test myself. People have died of this drug from less than I have taken. I don't know the details, but it seems to be I am lucky I'm alive. I'm sure the oral dose killed some of the bioactivity, but again, I did hold it in my mouth for 10 minutes. An average dose is around 500 UG. At 30 milligrams ingested, I took 60 hits. I always do an allergic reaction test with 1 to 3 milligrams with every drug I ordered, and for some reason I didn't with this batch. It nearly cost me my life. This drug isn't worth the risk. The pretty visuals might make you happy, but they aren't something you can't see on other drugs. There is very little introspection, and the only positive thing I felt was a connection to nature, which I can get with meditation or even cannabis. Even if you dose it out correctly, there's much better drugs out there. All I can say is, buyer beware. Even the best sources in the world make mistakes. Even the most careful of users make mistakes. Stay safe, happy tripping, and never go into something if you're not sure what you're getting. Namaste. Thanks for listening to this report. The link to the original report will be in the description, and there'll also be a link to my Fiverr if you'd like to hire me for any voiceover work. There'll also be a link to the new Discord server I've made for the channel if you've got Discord and you'd like to join and talk to similar people or chat. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.